I spent the last 5 days playing Silent Hill 2 Remaster. I finished it late last night. I played the whole game on normal puzzle mode and all of it on normal combat mode, except maybe the last 20-30 minutes of the game where it was getting a little too frustrating for me and slowing down the pace. Playing the game, I used no guides. I didn't use the internet. I didn't use any of the little card help here on PS5, which is what I played it on. It was just me playing the game. This isn't the review. The review will be blisteringly positive. This is, I got to let it settle, but I think this is definitely going to send some other games out of my top 10, and this is going to lodge itself in there pretty high up. This was excellent. I had never played Silent Hill 2 before, barely touched any of the other ones in the series, so I really didn't know anything about it. But boy, did I love it. And there's going to be a deep dive live show coming up next week with Cody Leach, who runs a very popular YouTube horror channel. A couple of us are going to be diving deep and discussing the themes and all this stuff and what we thought, what we liked, what we didn't like. This video is more honestly for me to get my thoughts out, to discuss it directly with you guys. And it's going to be all over the place. I basically took a lot of notes while I was playing. I had never really done that before. I had never had a reason to do that before. I think you're looking at like 60 pages of notes and thoughts I had while I was playing the game. So we're going to go through those in this video, at least the ones that I think are worth sharing, and just kind of, you know, have a place to put my thoughts. There's something about this game. I was an English major. I took a lot of literature classes. I like taking art. I like taking entertainment. And when it sort of has the meat on the bone, I like drilling down. I like getting to the essence of what it's about. And sometimes it's not one of these, a lot of people will push back sometimes on things like, well, if the creator didn't mean it, then what does it matter what you think, blah, blah, blah. It's not really about that. Sometimes the creator doesn't know what they mean. As a one-time creator, I can tell you a lot of times it wasn't until I was finished with a game that I knew what it was about at a context level, at a subtext level, at a thematic level. But beyond that, though, even if the author consciously or unconsciously intended or didn't intend for something, the very nature of the work being rich enough, or at least for you engaging mentally enough, that it stirs thoughts within you and ideas within you, and philosophies come to the surface and bubble up within you, that's a great piece of work, you know, whether it's entertainment intentionally or art intentionally or ideally both. And this is a game that really left me and leaves me with a lot to think about. And I don't know at the end of the day if this is a game that genuinely is as deep and smart and rich and marbled and layered as I feel it is. I could be falling for the trappings of it. Usually I can tell. I can kind of sniff that shit out pretty good. But in this case, there does seem to be a mind at work, as they say. And the weird part is, at the end of it, I still don't fully understand it. And on one hand, you can, champion that and say, oh, that's a great thing. See, it's deep, it's rich. But on the other hand, you can also say, yeah, because it's sort of, drowning in a sea of nonsense that is masquerading as something important to say. But fundamentally, when you take it apart, none of it really holds together. Now, it seems there's a lot of Silent Hill 2 analysis out on the internet, which is great. I haven't followed any of it. I've never read any of it. When I finished last night, people started sharing theories with me, and I immediately was like, okay, I have to get all this out before my initial response is corrupted, because I don't want other people's views yet. You know, that's why this show isn't live. I want to get my thoughts out, and they'll probably change as I read other people's analysis and go, oh my God, of course, that's what they meant. Or that's what that stood for. Oh, Jaffe, you're an idiot. That meant nothing. But I don't want it tainted with someone else's take. And so that's why I'm doing this as a video. So anyway, that's what this video is going to be. It's going to be in order of my notes, which is in order of how I played the game. I will be taking a live playthrough from YouTube. I'll put the link below so you know who to give credit to and thanks to, and you can go watch it over there if you want to see a pristine version without me yapping. And I'll timestamp this within reason, because I'm gonna jump all over the place. So if you're looking for a specific thing, I'll do my best to make sure that's clear in the timestamps. But here we go. This was just sort of my thought process playing Silent Hill 2. One of my definitely easily favorite games of the year, maybe my favorite game of the year. Here we go. So when I first loaded up the game, I went to settings. I never used to do that. And then the last couple of months, I've sort of been conditioned by the internet. When I would have a problem with the game, people would be like, check the settings, check the settings, check the settings. And, you know, I don't really like that, because to me, the game, in my opinion, should just be what the creators want without even having to think about the settings. And maybe this is one of the reasons I am so pro on artificial intelligence coming along and adapting the game to the player in real time in the future. Not just difficulty, but understanding intuitively or seemingly intuitively what the player is looking for. All of this stuff, kind of quality of life, the HUD, the colors, all that stuff, sure. But this, you know, I'm down with that, not a problem. And then obviously difficulty, you know, ideally difficulty would be something that adjusts sort of in real time as you play. But that's kind of not where we're at least not in a way that it seems important enough for developers to put a huge focus on that. But here's the one that really sent me thinking, was interactions, right? So in the game, you can choose button icon. It doesn't matter, just what it looks like. You can either turn the interaction icon off, or you can decide if you want it to be a button and how big it is, right? And that's, you know, there's a couple other ones, but that was the one right there that really stood out to me and really made me think, because the default of this is that there is an icon, right? And one of the problems I had with this company's and this director's previous game, The Medium, was it was very difficult to know what you could interact with, because those the buttons, the interactive icons, the volume of those that you had to step into in order to cause them to turn on, to sort of ping, that volume was really small. And a lot of times you would walk right past something that you needed to interact with, but you weren't quite right on top of it or close enough, and so you would miss it. And if you pair that with the fact that the character in that game walks really slow, you'd get stuck, and I'm like, okay, do I have to walk all the way back across this level and just sort of pixel hunt in hopes that one of these icons pops up? So it really is an interesting and weird choice they give to the player, right? Because it really fundamentally, it doesn't seem like it's that important, but it's crucial to how you play the game. And in fact, I started playing the game going, you know, I want to play it with this off, right? I want to consciously give myself over to the game, and I want to try to get super immersed in the world. And this is just the beginning of the game. This is me playing, but I'll show you what happened. Okay, so I had this idea, you know, I was walking around. The graphics are so beautiful in this game. It's a gorgeous looking game. The ambiance is great. The sound is great. And I was just like, you know, let me turn off the hotspots and let me trust that the developer is going to make it that if there is something I need to interact with, it's going to visually pop. I don't mean like glow, but it's going to, in the art direction, go, oh, you know, maybe I should come over and see if I can open this trunk, right? Or maybe I should go over and see if I can look through this telescope, right? And what I found was, at first I really enjoyed that, but as the game progressed, there was an anxiety about what if I'm missing things. And I'll show you, this is where I decided to turn it back on, right? So this part right here, I had the buttons turned off, and this, to me, I had gone up and I hit it with the pipe or the wood or whatever I had. I think it was the board, but nothing happened. So I moved on, and I must have spent this is probably one of the reasons, my playtime is longer than most people's. I must have spent 40 minutes wandering around the apartments until I finally said, let me turn it on. And the instant I walked past that thing, now that the hotspot button was turned on, suddenly I knew I could interact with it, and I started rolling again. And to me, this is a really interesting production problem. I mean, the ideal situation would be that the game visually does everything right in terms of art direction. Whereas if this trunk, and I don't know how you could do this really, but if this trunk is meant to be opened or examined, it somehow indicates it. Not out of a HUD element or a user interface element, just because it looks visually enticing enough. I mean, this is asking a lot, right? But what's really weird though, is even if you go back and turn on the hotspot buttons and you say, okay, I don't want to play without the hotspot buttons. I need them because it helps me from getting stuck. Even when you do that and turn those buttons back on, you actually end up doing fundamentally the same thing that you would do without them, which is the game really devolves like at an abstract level. You still end up wandering almost everywhere and going, okay, is there anything over here that I can interact with? It's not dissimilar to the old Sierra Online graphic adventures that were just, you got stuck in a puzzle, so you went into a room and you were just moving the mouse over every pixel hoping for a hotspot. That really hasn't changed. And I find that a problem worth solving because there comes a point where it feels like busy work. It feels like you come into a section of the game and before you can really do anything, you're just wandering around going, is this it? Is this it? Is this it? I mean, and it's not that dry, but that's a mentality of I think how a lot of people play these things. And in fact, what's weird about it is sometimes there are doors that open in the game that visually, they do a really good job on the doors, for example, that you need to use an inventory item with. Visually, it clearly looks like there's a keyhole or there's something to interact with. And then if you have the icons, it'll pop an icon and you can interact with it and go to your inventory. So that's solved really, really well. But in a door like this, sometimes doors like this do not open, but there's no X. So you have to just kind of go up to every door and slam into it, because this door visually doesn't really have any differentiation other than the sign above it. One is men, one is women. And suddenly that works, right? But what it does is it trains you to go into every door. And there's a lot of fucking doors in this game. And some open and some don't, but you're just banging into every door. And again, I don't want to say that like this game is guilty of something other games have solved. It's a real problem in games like this. And at least to me, it's a real problem. And as much as I love this game, that's kind of annoying. It would be really cool if there was a visual language that if you go back to these doors over here, it would be nice if I just knew, not from because the problem with hotspots is that at some point there's a volume that your character enters into, right? So that if that map was still in this car, when you get to like here, it's going to turn on. Okay, so maybe you're not going up as close, but you're still going up to everything that might be interactive and hoping or thinking a hotspot might appear, but not knowing until nope, I guess can't interact with that, right? So it's still the same gameplay. You're just not getting as close. It would be great if this door I knew I could push just by glancing at it, no matter how far away I was from it. Just being immersed in the space, I could take a glance and go interactive, not interactive. It would be, and it would be great if this door I knew I couldn't just by glancing at it. And is it better to be ham-fisted like this has boards over it or chains over it and this one doesn't? I don't know, because ultimately games are abstract no matter what the setting is. And in that, maybe it would make the game more enjoyable, but maybe it would make the being in the space less immersive. I don't know the solve, but I definitely wish this game had worked towards solving it, because that in a game as beautiful and immersive as this, that is frustrating to me, and it kind of pulls you out a little bit. But again, for the longest time, or not the longest time, but for a good hour or so, I was playing this game with no icons, because I loved being in the world, and I was like, hopefully the game will take care of me, but it didn't. And I don't mean that I'm not knocking the game. Very few games, if any, have really solved it in a satisfactory way. But even like that, could I interact? I mean, I know you know what I'm talking about, but it's just so fascinating to me. It's like, you're looking around and going, like, here's what I'll say. When I first started playing it, I was so immersed walking through these woods, because I said to myself, I'm going to let the game take care of me, and I'm going to let the game, if there's something I need to interact with, it'll let me know. And I'm not going to worry about, like, for example, these benches. I don't see anything over on those benches, so I'm not going to worry about the gameplay functionality of that. I mean, I want you to think about this. If you're not worrying about it, you're just in the world. You're thinking about the character. I was thinking about the character and his wife, and I didn't know what had happened to his wife except she died, but he got a letter. I'm like, what's that about? Blah, blah, blah. And so I really was feeling more immersed in the narrative, the art, being in it was almost like one of those YouTube videos of ASMR walking in the woods. And it was just like, this is kind of peaceful, and I loved the camera angle doing it. If I remember, I only played a little bit of the first Silent Hill 2 for like 30 minutes and I quit it. Long story, doesn't matter. So in fact, I've never played it, but I remember coming down this path, and I believe the camera was like removed, and it was kind of like a, far away shot showing this, and it was nowhere near as immersive and sort of tranquil and like, oh, this is really cool. So imagine that, but it's broken because you're looking for hotspots. No, nothing here. Oh, there's something. I didn't even see this note the first time, I don't think. I never saw that note. Okay. So think about that. I just think that's shit. I think that's shit. I can't visually see that from this far away, really, in any meaningful way. And if I didn't have the icons on, which I didn't, because I wanted to be more immersed, I would have missed it. And with the icons, I stopped being immersed and I just start looking for icons. Like, I mean, seriously, look how far away this is before it pings right there. Right. So now, instead of just walking down this path going, oh, I'm in Silent Hill, this is interesting, where is this adventure going to take me? I'm going, oh, nothing there, nothing there, nothing there. Right? I mean, that's problem. That's problem, my friends. It's a long way to say it, but I find this fascinating. What an interesting problem to have to solve. And I hope somebody does. Oh, by the way, before you hit me up in the comments, I am aware that James's head will pivot whenever there's something meaningful that's interactive, like this. He doesn't, but there's a note over here that the game clearly wants you to look at, and that's certainly not a bad thing. That helps, right? If you can catch it, it's kind of subtle, especially when you're moving around, but it's definitely, I'm glad it's there. It helps a lot. It also, I think, turns in the direction of enemies. I do wonder, like, the only way I knew about this was because I was playing a game recently called Hollow Body, which was very inspired by Silent Hill. And I was streaming that, and the stream was letting me know, oh, hey, it's like in Silent Hill when his head turns. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. But I wonder, I know the game doesn't really, there's no like tutorial, and that's good. Like there's, but there are little hotspots that pop up like text and says, hey, here's how you use this, here's how you use that. I could be wrong, but I don't think they ever alerted the player about this. And I think, I think it's a good question as to why they didn't. But anyway, it's all kind of related to what we were just talking about. Now I want to get on to part of my notes that just more quick hits. We'll dive deep again to a specific section coming up. But let me just kind of run through some quick things. The first one is... you guys may have been aware of some of the sort of culture war DEI horseshit associated with this game. People were really upset. Well, were they really upset? I don't know. But people made a thing about the main two women in this game, Angela and Maria, these two women right here. And they didn't like the way they looked. I guess they thought they were prettier in previous games. Okay, we'll get to the weirdness of that desire in a moment, but okay, fine. But they're fine. They look like normal humans. And two things on that. The first one is, I think horror is better when whether you're talking movies, games, whatever, when you can relate to the characters. You're not talking about Stellar Blade or Devil May Cry, where these are aspirational figures. You're talking about putting yourself in the shoes of these people and really relating to them. And in that sense, you know, whatever you think about the culture war stuff, if there is a genre of game that can sustain and probably does better when it's dealing with normal looking people, it is not just horror, but psychological horror. Like Resident Evil is a little different. It's kind of pulpy and fun and all that stuff. So it makes sense that you want, you know, the men, the women to just be like fashion models. I get that. But here, you know, I don't see what the problem is. First off, I also think James is just an average, ordinary guy. And even though I do think there was some debate over his look, which had more to do with his age, I never really heard anybody, and maybe I missed it, but I never really heard anybody complaining about, he's not fuckable. They left him alone, which I bring it up because it's obvious where a lot of that's coming from with these people who pretend to complain about this stuff, but come on. That really can't be something that they take issue with in a game like this. In any game, maybe, but in this game, come on. But the second thing about it is the narrative of this game and who these characters are. I mean, let's just take Angela. I mean, the woman is a survivor of incest. She's struggling. She's psychologically in turmoil and dealing with trauma. Are you really looking for her to be masturbatory material for you? Are you kidding? Intellectually, psychologically, a lot of people who are victims of sexual abuse don't, no matter how societally attractive they may or may not be, they cover up, they armor up with their clothing, with their style, with their lack of makeup. They do not want to be a target ever again. And the fact that people are out there complaining about the way she looks is insanely goofy to me at best. And at worst, it's a real creepy thing to know who she is as a character and still have that demand made of her. But beyond that, it speaks to the fact that a lot of these people are just looking to sort of stir up controversy and clicks because have you played this game? Have you played the game this is based on? You're looking for that character to get your rocks off? Are you out of your dumb, stupid fucking mind? I don't get it. Let's move on to Maria now. Maria, you could lay at the feet of the developer that perhaps they could have sex-potted Maria up more. This is what she looks like in the original game, and this is what she looks like now. I'm not saying she was, you know, super hot back then, but she was clearly younger. This character is clearly older, which I do think works more for the story that's being told. She looks more like a real person, but Maria may represent a character that needs to be overtly sexual. And in that, if she's supposed to represent that, I think there are two ways you could argue. One is that they probably should have pushed her more to be more overt in her flirtations and the way she looked and carried herself, although she did a pretty good job of it in this game. But I do think there is an argument to be made that if she represents what I think she's supposed to represent, psychologically, it may make sense that James sees her not totally successfully pulling off the succubus style character or the temptress style character. So this one's a little harder for me to call, but I could see this one being a directing call either way that you could argue your way out of as to why maybe she is less over the top sexual than maybe what people felt she was like back in the original Silent Hill 2. I just want to, real quick, I want to talk about the sound in this game. The sound is amazing. The ambiance, the music, the voice performances, but just also just the little details and the seemingly aware take that the sound designers have on being part of the storytelling team as well. I mean, I loved this part here where he goes up to this tunnel, and if you go up, you know, it just kind of gives you this shot. Nothing really happens. But if you go up and you listen, there's clearly something weird happening in that tunnel, right? Which is, at first, it's unnerving and strange and makes you curious, but it's not really important to what you're doing, and you move on. And I've seen some playthroughs. This is me playing, because I've seen a lot of playthroughs where people literally just kind of walk by it and move on with their day, right? But if you actually go up, it becomes very clear that sound is emanating from there, right? I don't know if I'm going to be able to get there. Let me see if I can get the footage, though, of what ultimately happens is when you get into town, right? See, you don't see that tunnel there. It's on the other side of this wall, which you can't access at the moment. But eventually, and I haven't totally checked the map and how it lines up, but you basically see what is clearly the other side of that tunnel. Or at least you see something that looks just like the other side of the tunnel. And there's a bunch of monsters and stuff that you've been fighting at that point right outside that tunnel. And it's really neat to think back to earlier in the game where you're like, oh shit, so they sounded like monsters, but now I actually know that's what that was. I just love that kind of nuance and detail on the soundtrack. And again, this may not be the exact same tunnel we were looking at the flip side before, but you definitely put two and two together, and what you were hearing here are the monsters that you had just fought on this side, whichever tunnel it actually is. It's very cool. Another thing that I think is really cool about the sound in this game is this idea of the radio, right? So when you first come into Silent Hill, you don't have the radio. And honestly, you don't see any monsters yet. There's this scene here.
Hey, wait.
Even though we know that turns out to be a monster, James, as you can tell, just thinks it's a person. It's not until this scene where he picks up this radio that he actually becomes aware that, holy shit, there are monsters. There are creatures. They're trying to kill me. I'm in danger.
Stay back.
I love this for two reasons. One is that, I was playing the game originally with headphones, and it actually was not a good idea, even though I know it's 3D sound and all that. But when I started playing it with the TV coming out of the sound, I was able to hear a lot better the radio coming out of the controller. And what ultimately happens is the radio is your alert. It's like your audio radar to let you know, oh, when this starts crackling, there's a monster around, okay? Or monsters around. And it's really cool because unlike when you've used the PS5 or PS4 controller with audio, like, oh, you hear the sounds of engines or gunfire or whatever, whatever. Is it more immersive? I don't know. It's what it is. Never really bothered me or affected me. But because the radio and the controller are the same size and you hold them roughly the same way that James is holding the radio, and that the function that he's getting from it is the function we're getting from it, there's this kind of almost like cool prop that shipped with the game, like one of those, collector's editions or something where it's like, oh, it comes with the radio. And it actually works. And just even that slight thing is enough to ground you more in the immersion of the world. So I love that about that mechanic. The other thing is sort of more of a yes, I was an English major, so I'm going to go here. But there's something about the fact that until he touches that radio, there are no monsters. I mean, we see them, but he's not aware of them. And is that just a coincidence? Because the developer's like, well, yeah, he needs the radio to hear the monsters. Sure, there's practical reasons for it, but there's also something in the writing, I think, intentionally or not, that says that when the protagonist acquires this device, which is used to communicate, to give you information, suddenly he begins to wake up to his adventure or his nightmare or whatever it is that he's waking up to. I know is debatable, I tend to look at the whole game as a positive, believe it or not. I don't know what most people look at it as, but I think ultimately this is a redemption, a forgiveness of himself. And I think that message, there's something very poetic to me about that message coming to him from somewhere out there. And really the first voice he hears is Mary. Initiating him on this journey. I love that, man. I love that. I love the fact that even though she's clearly gone, he doesn't know that, but she's getting through to him somehow and saying, you need to walk this path because it's the only way you're ever going to escape this cycle and be whole again. I love that. I fucking love that. Okay, I know what I'm about to show you is stretching it, but this is just kind of as I'm playing in the order I'm playing it. This is kind of what I noticed. I'm going to show you this other guy's playthrough, but basically towards the beginning of the game, James is running down the road, and this happens.
Is that?
Now, it's weird, right? Because at first he has this line.
Is that?
And it seems like, well, you know, is that? Like, it's something important. But then it just ends up being a matchbook, right? I mean, who responds like this?
Is that?
To a matchbook. But if you look at the scene, there's something else there. And I assumed he was responding to the dead body.
Is that?
Now, up until this point, he had only been seeing blood. And so maybe he was just like, is that a dead body? Okay, maybe. But I got to give you this theory. Based on nothing other than just gut about what's happening in this game without having done any research. This could all be wrong. But in fact, I'm going to try to stop prefacing this by saying, you know, all this could be wrong. This is just first blush. So I'll try not to say that anymore because it gets annoying. But look at the character down there, right? That looks like James. That looks like a dead version of him. He's got the coat. The style is the same. The boots are the same. It's not like the developer couldn't afford more dead bodies that didn't look like the protagonist. Clearly that, you know, they have a lot of dead bodies in this game. And I'm like, that's you. And I think the response of this response,
Is that?
that makes more sense when you're going, is that me? What the fuck am I looking at? Versus, oh, is that a matchbook? Right? Okay, that's A. B, later in the game, when you encounter Eddie, who has killed his father, clearly he's done it over and over and over, he talks about, and you can see multiple corpses of his dad right outside the meat locker, okay? So it's a thing in this world. This is I'll get more in depth on it later in the videos, but my guess is Silent Hill is basically it's a vortex. It is Purgatory, right? And he's living this over and over and over until he can somehow break out of this cycle of guilt, which ultimately, if you play the game and beat the game, you have some sense of at least the ending I had, some sense of that. But I think I think what you're seeing there is just one of the many times James has tried to get out of Silent Hill and died. I think basically James has been doing this for a very, very long time. And he is trapped in this world and he is seeing the remnants of his failures. And I think the corpses of Eddie's dad helps that theory along, that this is kind of what happens in Silent Hill. We'll dive into that a little bit more. James looked at me. He's like, you're a fucking idiot, Jaffe. Shut up, James, you piece of shit. But that's my theory. That's my theory right now. It may change, but that's my theory, that Silent Hill is Silent Hell, basically. And it is your own personal Silent Hell that you struggle with until you figure your shit out, which is what this game is about. In fact, now I know that to be the case because when I was capturing footage for this video, after I recorded talking to the camera, I came upon a body of James, or this same body I hadn't seen before. And it's the same body. It looks just like James. And there's this note lying a couple of feet away from him, which makes it clear a lot of these notes, if not all the notes, are left by previous iterations of James in the hope that this time the new version will make it out. I get goosebumps. I don't know why. I'm so excited by this. It's just such a cool fucking game, man. I got a lot more to fucking talk about. A lot more. I mean, what is up with the clocks, man? You notice the clocks? I'm sure you have. If you're into this game, you're like, yeah, Jaffe, we noticed the clocks back in 96. I know. But it's new to me. And all the clocks, exact same time. Check it out. I mean, check that out. Every single clock is 9, 10, and 15 seconds. Why? I have theories, of course. But why? And at first I was like, I mean, again, we're not in the days anymore where, well, we only had enough texture for one clock face, so don't look into it, Jaffe. It's not meaningful. That's just sort of that we had one artist do it and we had to reuse it over and over because we're on a schedule, baby. I get it. But no, that's not this game. This game has a lot of variety in its textures. That was not the issue. The other point is that there are other times we see clocks in the game that are Roman numeral clocks, and it's still the exact same time. So is 9, 10... Does it ever explain it? Does it leave it a mystery? Did the original game explain it? Did the original game do this? I'm sure it did. Is that when he killed his wife? 9, 10, and 15 seconds? There was a time I thought that was his time of death, like execution, because of the whole electric chair thing in the prison section of the game. But I don't think that's the case. I don't know what this time means, but point is, I got a lot to talk about. I'm loving this game. I'm loving diving into this game. I want to hear your comments. Also, if you like this video and you want to see part 2, 3, and 4, because it's going to take me a while to finish this. Again, Monday we'll be doing the deep dive live, so we can talk about it there. But let me know at the end of this, if you've made it this far, let me know if you like it and you want to see a part 2 of this. But in the meantime, be well, be safe, and there you go, baby. What a game. What a great fucking game.